Welcome back. Tomorrow morning, Senator Ron Johnson is holding a panel discussion in Washington, D.C. called COVID-19: A Second Opinion. The senator is bringing together a group of doctors who have been highly critical of the government's response to coronavirus and the vaccine. Senator Johnson is seeking a third term in the Senate, and I talked with him earlier this week from Washington about re-election and the criticism he's facing. So I want to get right to an event that you're having on Monday. You're bringing together doctors and scientists, several whom are considered to be COVID vaccine skeptics, for a panel. And considering people are obviously already skeptical of the vaccine, I mean, according to the state of Wisconsin, less than 60% of Wisconsinites have received at least 2 doses. What is your goal with these types of events?
Well, first of all, I push back on the way people are typifying some of the eminently qualified doctors and medical researchers that I'm going to have join a discussion. I think one of the things I've been disappointed in, let's put it that way, is since the beginning of the pandemic, there's only been one narrative, there's only been one opinion in terms of how to approach this. It's all been vaccine-centered, which, by the way, I was a big supporter of Operation Warp Speed. I'm in no way, shape, or form an anti-vaxxer. But there are issues and there are concerns. And let's face it, the vaccines have not been as effective or as safe as we all hoped and prayed they would be. And we have to face that reality.
But the CDC says they are continuing to monitor right on their website the safety of the COVID-19 vaccine. Do you think that's a lie?
I would say that I don't have a great deal of faith in the leadership of the CDC and the federal health agencies at this point. They have not been honest. They have not been transparent. Just take a look at, for example, Anthony Fauci. His emails were obtained through a FOIA request, heavily redacted. Congress is not subject to FOIA redactions. We've asked for those exact same emails, unredacted. We're getting them 50 pages at a time. They're not being honest. They're not being transparent. And that always, when people won't ask or answer a legitimate question that I ask, I start getting a little suspicious.
Do you think this is a conspiracy? I mean, Democrats call you a conspiracy theorist, are you?
Well, again, you're just using pejoratives. Tell me one thing that I've talked about that is incorrect, that is misinformation, that isn't factually true.
We had the state Democratic Party chair on the show last weekend, Ben Wickler. I want to play part of what he said about you and then get your response.
His race is a genuine toss-up, and his own approval rating at a time that, is often challenging for folks in my party. Ron Johnson's approval rating is only 35% in Wisconsin. That is terrible for someone who's been in office for 12 years.
So Ben Wickler talking about your approval rating there. I mean, you're running in a very purple state, Wisconsin. You will have to get some moderates to vote for you, people who really aren't part of your base. How will you do that as someone who's become a very polarizing figure in politics?
First of all, I'm not a polarizing figure. It's just that people in the legacy media call me one. And all of a sudden, you become one. I'm not a polarizing figure at all. I'm just trying to convey the truth. I've done a really good job as Wisconsin's United States Senator. I passed right to try. I made sure that every small business in America got a tax cut along with the big C Corps.
Then how do you get that 35% approval rating up?
It's not surprising that having withstood a year's worth of attacks from the legacy media, which again is pretty much the communication apparatus for the Democrat Party, that maybe my poll numbers have slipped. But again,
so you blame your poll numbers on the media.
In 2010 and 2016 were wildly off as well. So I don't put a lot of faith in these early polls. There's only one poll that counts, and that's on Election Day. And what I have seen as I've traveled around the state of Wisconsin, there are many people like myself concerned about the disaster that is Democrat governance, and were encouraging me strongly to run. And that's in the end why I did it.
Senator, who do you think will be your biggest competition coming out of the Democratic primary?
I have no idea. Pretty much no matter who the Democrats choose, that individual will be pretty much a rubber stamp for Chuck Schumer and Democrat policies like open borders, catch and release, not only border, but within our criminal justice system, low bail, no bail. Let's face it, Adrian, Waukesha never should have happened. That tragedy at the Christmas parade never should have happened, except for Democrat policies of low bail, letting somebody out on the streets that never should have been allowed in the streets. The Kenosha riot should have ended after one night, but it didn't because Governor Evers and Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes actually incited the rioters and refused to provide the type of manpower to quell the riots. So again, Democrat governance has been a disaster for America. 7% inflation, 40-year record. That's because of Democrat out-of-control spending and debt. So again, no, I think Americans, I think Wisconsinites are ready to first stop the harm, the damage being done by Democrat governance, and hopefully return to what works: lower regulation, or competitive tax system, and the truth. This race will literally be the difference in a contest between the truth and lies and distortion.
This race is going to be expensive. How much of your own money will you spend in order to win?
None. I didn't spend any in my last race.
How much money do you think it will take to defeat Democrats? I know that Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes just said he raised $150,000 in the 72 hours after you announced your reelection bid.
Yeah, a grotesque amount. I mean, one of the reasons, by the way, I did not make a decision until very late last year. But one of the reasons I held off making a decision is these campaigns are way too long. They spend way too much money. The Democrats already spent $9 million against me last year. $9 million. I hadn't even decided whether or not to run. Democrats already spent $9 million on personal attack ads, the politics of personal destruction. They can't run on the record. They can't run on the disaster that is Democrat governance. So it's just going to be a smear campaign against me. I will run on the issues.
Have you talked with President Trump in the last few weeks?
No, I haven't.
And did he, before that, say anything about you running to you personally?
No.
Do you still think he's the leader of the Republican Party at this point? Do you see him as that?
You know, I'm not a political pundit. I'll let others make those judgments.
But as someone who is a face of the Republican Party, who is really the leader of your party?
Well, we have all kinds of leaders. You know, obviously he was former president. He's certainly involved in the debate, and that's up to him to decide, you know, to what extent he wants to be involved. I'm going to run my race. I'll be representing Wisconsinites, as I always have.
Up next, we have new polling numbers in the race for Milwaukee mayor.